Still broke, still a nobody after all these years. And an imaginary wife? Oh. Still poor, still alone. Did you invent a wife just to save face, Montrell?
3 years now. You still hasn't changed, have you?
Then where is this mystery wife? Or does she only exist in your head?
She's on her way.
Sure she is, inventing an entire marriage, almost sad.
I run a construction and infrastructure company. We just closed a contract with the city.
She had no idea. 2 days earlier, the man standing in front of her had signed a $412 million infrastructure contract with the city of Chicago. My name is Montrell Kane. I'm 42 years old, and I've spent most of my life believing one simple thing: that a man's worth isn't in what people say about him at a party. It's in what he builds when nobody's watching. 20 years in construction taught me that. Marriage taught me it twice as hard. 8 years ago, my ex-wife walked out of our house on the south side of Chicago with 2 suitcases and a look on her face like she'd already moved on before she packed the first one. I didn't chase her down Halsted Street. I didn't call her family begging for a second chance. I let her go, and I went quiet. Some folks mistake quiet for broken. They're never the same thing. Which brings me to a Saturday night in October, in the grand ballroom of the Chicago Marriott downtown Magnificent Mile on Michigan Avenue, at our high school reunion. The first one I'd bothered to attend since the divorce. I was sitting near the back with a glass of ice water, listening to my ex-wife's laugh carry across the room the way it always used to when she thought she'd won something. "Look at Montrell over there," Titilayo said, loud enough for half the ballroom to catch it. Still wearing that same tired face. 8 years since the divorce, and the man's still alone. Some men just never climb out of the hole they dig for themselves. Her friends laughed. Somebody I didn't recognize added, "Didn't he used to talk about building something big? Guess all that's left is the ego and a tool belt." I didn't answer. I just watched. And here's the part nobody in that ballroom knew yet. The part I need you to sit with for a second before we go any further. 2 days before that reunion, my legal team sent over the final paperwork on a $412 million infrastructure contract with the city of Chicago. 18 months of work, coming down to one last signature. My name was on that paperwork. Not a company name. Mine. Titilayo didn't know that, but there was a second thing happening in that ballroom that night, something even I didn't fully understand yet. A man standing beside my ex-wife who kept glancing at my watch instead of my face. Not admiring it, measuring it. Like he was trying to solve a math problem he didn't want anybody to know he was working on. Before we get into the story, I want you to remember something my grandmother used to say on her porch on 79th Street, rocking in that old chair that had been creaking since Eisenhower was president. "Baby, the folks who talk the loudest about your failures are usually the ones most afraid you're about to prove them wrong." She was right about a lot of things. She was right about this. Let me take you back 2 days earlier to a quieter moment, because that's really where this story starts. It was a gray Chicago Thursday, the kind of sky that can't decide if it wants to rain. I was in my truck on Lakeshore Drive, coffee going cold in the cup holder, when the invitation buzzed through on my phone. My old friend Efe had been the one pushing me to go. "You've spent 8 years building your life back up in silence, Montrell," she said over the phone, that same no-nonsense tone she'd had since 10th grade. "Go to that reunion, not to prove anything, just to close the door properly." I almost said no. I'd built a good, quiet life, a home in the Gold Coast, a wife who loved me steady and sure, work that mattered. I didn't need Titilayo's approval to feel like a man. But something in me wanted to walk back into that room one time, not as the man who left broken, but simply as myself. So Saturday night, I put on a plain charcoal suit, no flash, no statement. I drove to the Marriott alone. Ash had a foundation board meeting running late. She runs an education fund for kids across the South and West Sides, work she cares about more than any gala or reunion. and she told me she'd catch up with me there. The Marriott's lobby smelled like fresh-cut flowers and expensive coffee. A jazz trio played low near the elevators, something slow and brassy that made the whole place feel like it was holding its breath before a show. Outside, rain had started tapping soft against the windows overlooking Michigan Avenue, the streetlights blurring gold and red on the wet pavement below. I straightened my jacket in the elevator mirror, took one slow breath, and reminded myself why I'd come. Not to prove a single thing, just to close a door that had been left cracked open for 8 long years. I walked into that ballroom under gold chandeliers and low jazz, and the first face I saw was Titilayo's. She smiled at me, the way people smile when they think they've already won. "Well, look who decided to show up," she said, stepping closer, drink in hand, her voice pitched just loud enough for the room. "Still alone, Montrell? Or are you still out there swinging a hammer for a living, hoping somebody notices?" I looked her dead in the eye. Calm. Steady. "No," I said. "I'm married." For one full second, the whole cluster of old classmates around her went quiet. Then Titilayo laughed. A big, performative laugh, the kind meant to convince a room before it convinces the person laughing. Nobody in that ballroom believed me yet. They had no idea how wrong they were about to be proven. Or how fast. If you've ever walked back into a room full of people who counted you out, stay with me, because what happened next in that ballroom is the part nobody saw coming. Titilayo threw her head back and laughed louder. "Married? That's rich, Montrell, truly." She turned to the circle of old classmates gathered around her, like she needed witnesses for whatever came next. "Y'all hear this? Montrell says he's married. A man who couldn't build a stable life in 8 years suddenly got a wife nobody's ever heard of." I kept my voice even. 3 years now. 3 years, she repeated, like the words tasted strange in her mouth. "And where is this mystery wife tonight? Home? Or maybe she doesn't exist outside your head." Standing beside her was a man I didn't recognize. Tall, groomed within an inch of his life, a suit that cost more than it fit him. Corbin. I'd learn his name soon enough. What I noticed first wasn't his face. It was his eyes. They kept dropping to my wrist, to the plain steel watch I'd worn every day for 6 years, the one that used to belong to my father. He wasn't looking at it the way a man looks at something he likes. He was looking at it the way a man looks at a number he's trying to calculate. "She's finishing up a meeting," I said simply. "She'll be here soon." Titilayo waved a hand like she was swatting away a fly. "Still nothing, Montrell. Still poor. Still alone, even if you've invented somebody to sit next to you tonight." I let that land and pass through me without taking root. Anger is a poor tenant. You let it stay too long, it stops paying rent and starts tearing up the walls. I'd learned that the hard way. Because the truth is, Titilayo's words dragged me somewhere I hadn't let myself go in years. I remembered a night on the south side. Rain coming down so hard it bounced off the pavement outside a downtown conference center. I was standing under a thin jacket, soaked through, waiting on Titilayo to finish a networking event for a certification program she wanted badly. I'd sold my grandfather's set of framing tools 2 weeks earlier. The good steel ones, the ones I'd used to put myself through my first construction jobs, just so she could afford the enrollment fee. I never told her where the money came from. I didn't need her gratitude. I needed her to have a shot at something better. When she finally came outside that